right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Buck Ball Podcast. I'm your host, JT, and I got a very special guest with me, Steve Chea from Twitter. If you don't know him, he does some All-22 breakdown. He does some things for Pewter Report. Go ahead and let the people know what you got going on, Steve, and how you doing.
Doing great. Thanks for having me on the pod, JT. I've been breaking down the Bucs for the All-22 on Twitter for the last 4 seasons. Continue to do it after every game, usually about Tuesday or Wednesday. I just started working officially with Pewter Report, and I'm going to have I've been releasing some one-off stuff in the off-season. We're going to have some regular features during the season, but I'm just going to continue to do my Twitter breakdowns and then publish an article on Pewter Report once a week.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff, man. It's awesome stuff. And let's just go ahead and get right into it, because your latest thing was the eye in the sky about Gerald McCoy. And Gerald McCoy is a very prominent piece to the puzzle right now, because as it sits, the draft is 6 days away, 5 days away, something like that. And we don't even have enough money to sign our draft picks. According to Spotrac, we have $1.7 million. So the thing with me is I hate that Gerald McCoy could be a cap casualty making the money he's making, considering that he is still a disruptive player and he's been a face of the franchise. And then you have a player like Jason Pierre-Paul, who's only going into his second year, and he's making about the same money that Gerald's making. And he played injured a lot last year, and there's a very good chance that he could go down. So if you end up without Gerald, and then Gerald at JPP goes down, that kind of puts you in a bind, especially with the player that they're thinking about taking, which is Devin White, which kind of everyone is already – they haven't put him in pencil. They're putting him in pen as far as mock drafts go.
Sure.
So, but I watched the All-22 just like you. I think every fan should, because you just can't sit here and look at the stat sheet and say, you're like, okay, he didn't have any sacks this game. That's lazy. That's lazy analysis. Matt Ryan might get off his base and throw a bad interception. You'll be like, okay, that's really awesome. Levante David got a pick, but then you don't see Gerald McCoy was the reason that throw was even forced in the first place. And, that's just kind of the thing that typical fans don't notice. So that's why I appreciate things that you do and breaking the games down. It kind of brings a different perspective to it. And some people just don't like Gerald McCoy because he's a nice guy, and that's fine. But it's just sometimes ignorant to me.
Right, yeah. A lot of what he does isn't necessarily quantified in stats or tackles. There's a lot more to his position that makes a lot of the other guys better. And, in the article I posted this week, there was one clip where, JPP actually gets a sack, but he gets a sack because McCoy makes the quarterback step up and basically into the sack. He's not really going to get credit for that, aside from maybe a hurry, but that's really the value that he brings.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't Chris Baker doing that. It was Gerald McCoy. Things like that. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit, since it is the latest news, and then we'll hop right into some draft prospects. I just want to talk about the schedule a little bit, because I was I'd asked Twitter. I set out a little poll: how many primetime games do you think we get? 4:00 games, because we haven't had many the past couple of years. It usually happens when the team gets to be kind of relevant. But they ended up having 4 p.m. games, 1 prime time, 1 overseas. 2 of the games being West Coast, Seahawks, Rams. But they're getting the Panthers out of the way really, really early. And I thought that was kind of interesting, especially playing in London and things like that. But the biggest thing was, and it was a national story, was the amount of travel that the Bucs have to take. They're going a full 7 weeks without even playing in Tampa again, and that's just crazy. And fans usually flip out about the schedule sometimes, like, oh my God, what are they doing? And they don't realize they run like 50,000 simulations before they finally get the right one. But even I guess he's the head guy over the schedule making, said that he wanted to give the Bucs another chance, or he wanted to do a do-over for the Bucs schedule because he felt like they got cheated. And I thought that was crazy. But, the quarterbacks that we're going to face this year is a pretty good slot. We got Jimmy G. Obviously, we got Cam Drew and Matt Ryan 2 times. But Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, Nick Foles, Matt Stafford, Eli Manning, Luck. Let's just go ahead and assume that it's going to be Kyler Murray. And then Mariota, we got that revenge game. We have a lot of mobile quarterbacks that this defense is going to have to go after.
Yep. The schedule's interesting. The 7 weeks away from Raymond James is tough. They have two. The part that kind of irks me is not necessarily the amount of time they're away from Raymond James. It's more that they have to go to the West Coast once to start with the Rams in Week 4. Then they come back, and then they go abroad to they play the Saints, which is not far. Then they go abroad to London, which is fine. They have their bye week, so they get to come back to Tampa. Then they go to Tennessee and then Seattle. So they have 2 cross-country trips within that. The Raiders have a similar schedule, basically just a week earlier. And, because the Bucs are hosting the Super Bowl in 2021, they have to do a London game, which is fine.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But just the order of it and the fact that they're making their 2 cross-country trips during that is kind of tough. I also don't love that there are the 2 4:00 games early. I think one of the advantages of being a Florida home team is you get to take advantage of that heat. You're going to be training in it throughout all the summer. You're going to hope the guys are going to be really conditioned. So you would hope that guys are kind of playing in the heat, and the Bucs would be better used to that. Now, obviously, that hasn't been the case necessarily in the past.
It's hot.
Be just the team has been bad. But I would have hoped that they would have been able to take advantage of the Florida heat a little more.
Yeah, well, not to mention, I've always wanted the Bucs to have more 4 p.m. games and primetime games and things like that because the 1 o'clock games, they are, for one thing, when you're watching on all 22 and you got the brightness up, it does hurt your eyes when the sun's beaming off that field. But another thing is when they play these 4 o'clock games in early September and things like that, it's raining a lot. It always seems to rain around the 4 o'clock games when they've had them. I mean, you go back to the Denver game, you go back to the Rams game, we had like lightning delays and things like that.
Yep.
So yeah, those are just kind of things I just wanted to touch on. I'm going to do another podcast later on with somebody else, and we're going to go a little more into it. But while I have you here, because I know you're a film guy, you're a draft guy, I wanted to go over the draft with you. Sure. But what's weird about this draft for me is, and I don't know if you feel kind of the same way. I'm not as excited about this draft as I normally am the past 3 or 4 seasons because. I mean, I'm excited about the first pick because I'm excited about having a pick that high to get a player of, any of the calibers. But I'm more excited about the players they've drafted in the last 2 or 3 years with a new coaching staff to see if they were even, you know what I mean? Does that make sense to you? I'm more excited about
definitely. You want to see if Rojo can bounce back with a new coach. You want to see if MJ Stewart is going to, move to safety or if he's going to stick at nickel. You're going to see how, he performs, and I get what you're saying there.
Yeah, I like Justin Evans to play closer to the line. I actually did a Justin Evans podcast. I watched 4 or 5 games of him, took a lot of notes, and I went and watched Earl Thomas and guys like that to kind of, see how a real safety plays that position. And I just felt like they were playing him so far off the ball sometimes that he was like out of the screen. But whenever he was around the box or he was – closer to the line of scrimmage, he was making some plays. He was sometimes getting to the play before the linebackers were. And I thought that was awesome. That's an awesome thing for him, especially with someone athletic as him and things like that. So he's one of the players I'm most excited for. Obviously, Ronald Jones, Noah Spence in a new scheme,
sure.
Which I thought he should always be a stand-up player myself.
Yep. Yeah, he really has the size for a stand-up player, not necessarily in the ground.
Yeah, and
4-3 end.
Yeah, and when they drafted him, they said he was a designated pass rusher, but I think he was always meant to be a 3-4 linebacker.
Right.
So let's go ahead and get this underway. Let's go ahead and talk about the draft. Obviously, we got the number 5 overall pick, and a lot of people, like I said before, Devin White is penciled in as the player that the Bucs are going to take, and obviously that probably is mostly true. But then you have to think, okay, if they take Devin White, are they passing on some of the elite, the meat and potatoes of the draft, which is like the defensive line and things like that? Because after Devin White and Devin Bush, the drop-off is basically Mack Wilson and a couple of other guys who I wouldn't draft as a middle linebacker. I would draft them as maybe more of a Will or a Sam. So if you drafted Devin White, I think that kind of hinders you later on in the draft. Now, even though Devin White is a need, I mean, you have Jack Sitchy coming off 2 ACLs. You have Kendall Beckwith, who's probably never going to play again. If Levante David goes down, we're definitely screwed. We got Joe Dirt, And so
Riley
I
Buller,
understand, Riley Bullough. So I understand the need to draft him. And a lot of people say, okay, he could be the next Ray Lewis, and and if you could go back, you take Luke Kuechly at 5 and things like that. That's fine, but that's all hindsight. You know what I mean? You kind of
Sure.
feel the same way?
Yeah,
Or
I
are
mean,
you on the Devin White hype train?
if he turns out to be really good, then it doesn't really matter what position he plays. Like Saquon Barkley was the second pick in the draft last year, and that could be viewed as a mistake because they didn't take a quarterback. But the fact of the matter is, he's a really good player. There's going to be what makes it kind of look bad is the quarterbacks do look pretty good after him. If the quarterbacks were kind of 50-50, it'd kind of be up in the air.
Yeah,
But I mean, I was actually just watching the 2014 draft today, and just looking at it, it was like Jadeveon Clowney, the huge tackle from Baylor that went number 2 to the Rams that was a bust. And it just you go down the line, it's 50% hit rate, 50% bust. So if you have a guy, regardless of position, that you think is going to be a player, I'm okay with taking him. That being said, if a Josh Allen or even a Quinnen Williams falls, I would think the Bucs would place a higher importance on those premium positions. But it should also be interesting because if a quarterback or just a player nobody really sees going in the top four goes in the top 4, then that pushes more talent down to Tampa. Jason Light, people are he's a polarizing figure just because people are kind of all over the board with him. I actually really like Jason Light. What he has proven to be really good at is capitalizing on value in the draft. So if there's a guy that he likes, that he thinks he can get a few picks later, we've seen him do that with Vernon Hargreaves and Vita Vea too last year. So it's really about, I think that if they do draft Devin White, which is certainly a possibility, I would be surprised if they did it at 5. One team to keep an eye on, I think, is the Detroit Lions. They've had, each team only gets 30 official visits with these prospects, and the Lions have been using their 30 visits on the top defensive pass rushers, so Quinnen Williams, Nick Bosa, Josh Allen. So they're picking 8th. It's kind of curious seeing as none of those players are projected to be available even at 6.
Right.
So for them, they're a team I'm keeping an eye on as a potential move-up candidate. They did sign Trey Flowers as an edge guy, but if a Josh Allen or a Quinnen Williams falls, is that the type of player to make them jump?
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is people always think teams only move up for quarterbacks. Teams move up for defensive players or offensive players if they really, really love that guy and they think he's the 1 or 2 pieces away. Teams do that, and that's a very good point. I love that.
Yeah, Saints moved up for Marcus Davenport last year. I mean, Julio Jones is probably the most famous non-quarterback move up, but yeah, I mean, teams move up all the time.
What about Sammy Watkins? Didn't the Bills move up for Sammy Watkins quite a bit?
Yep. Yeah, the Bills moved up from 9, I think, to 4 to draft Sammy Watkins. So that was a big jump too.
Yeah, big draft for wide receivers on that one. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just go ahead and get into it. Your thoughts, my thoughts. Let's just do our 1 through 7. Obviously, we got a 6th-round pick because if it's a compensatory pick from Philly and the 7th from Arizona. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to let you go first. Your first-round pick, who you would take if you were the GM, looking at the state of the Bucs, maybe looking ahead to the schedule, maybe looking at the division. Who would you take number 1 overall if they fell to you?
With the 5th pick, I mean, Quinnen Williams would be the ideal pick. I'm pretty sure he's not going to be there. Nick Bosa, I'm assuming, is off the board as well.
Yeah.
Josh Allen for sure has a shot to fall. Do I think he's going to fall? I actually do. In this situation, I would love to take him, but I would foresee the Bucs trading back a few picks actually with Detroit and taking someone like Devin White. So I think they'll take Devin White. I would hope that they would take Josh Allen if they were there, or if not, capitalize on value. But I think that they're going to ultimately draft Devin White. Hopefully, just not at the 5th pick.
Yeah, that is something. And there's been a lot of talk that the Raiders have been really, really high on Devin White. And,
Yep.
they also have 2 extra picks. So taking a middle linebacker who a lot of people think is kind of too high, well, when you have 2 extra picks, nothing's really too high. You can take any player you want if you think he's a game changer who's going to help your team win games. So
yeah, the Raiders are going to be really interesting because,
I know.
Hypothetically, if Nick Bosa goes at 2, which everyone's kind of projecting, the 3rd spot is interesting because the Jets have put up a for sale sign on that pick. You think anyone moving up is going to be for a quarterback. So hypothetically, if Dwayne Haskins goes, if someone really thinks Oakland's going to draft Drew Lock, maybe somebody jumps up and drafts Drew Lock. What I don't foresee happening is the Raiders messing up their 1st pick. I think whatever 1st pick they have is going to be good. And they got Mike Mayock steering the ship. He's probably the most respected media draft analyst. And he's usually pretty spot on with his evaluation. I know at the scouts home. Daniel Jeremiah chimed in on that, so that's not really unusual at all.
That's crazy.
So I foresee them making the right pick. They are pretty strong at defensive tackle. They drafted was it PJ Hall and
PJ Hall, Maurice
Hurst, who are both pretty solid. So would Quinnen Williams be redundant? Even if he was there, I can't see.
But who do you feed? Like who gets most of the snaps when you've invested that much capital? I mean, I'm sure somebody's going to get phased out, but that's just kind of like it seems like overkill.
Yeah, I mean the same thing could have been said in 2006 or 2007 when the Bucs had the 7th pick, I believe, and they had Cadillac Williams, and they opted to not draft Adrian Peterson. So, you usually draft talent and you kind of let them figure it out later.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if Al Davis was still there, Marquise Brown would be the 4th overall pick for sure, just for the simple fact of his speed.
Yeah.
So, to me, this is what I would do. I hate to say it, but obviously, I think the writing's on the wall with Gerald McCoy as much as I kind of am in denial about it. I think the writing is on the wall. If the board fell the right way, which I think it could, the Bucs could have their pick between Josh Allen or Ed Oliver. To me, I would love Josh Allen. There's a lot of people that say if you watch the film on Ed Oliver, he wasn't used very right at Houston. So his numbers aren't, he doesn't have the numbers of a top 5 overall pick. But they say if you watch the film, you can see that he was just clearly using him as nose tackle at 270 pounds, is he? You know what I mean? And if Gerald's gone, I want an immediate replacement for Gerald. I mean, I don't know when Gerald would move if they kept him through the draft somehow, which I don't even know how it's possible. Maybe they get rid of William Golston. Maybe they restructure some money and move somebody's salary from this year to next year. If Gerald's gone, I'm going Ed Oliver. That's going to be my pick. I'm going with the meat and potatoes of the draft, and I will figure out the linebacker situation down the line. Plus, Jason's been good at finding late round guys to fill certain draft needs if he feels somebody's more important earlier. So I'm kind of putting my trust in him to figure that out. I'm not going to sit here and put my GM hat on and be like, well, if you miss on Devin White, then who are you taking later? I'm not going to play that part. I'm going to go with the strength of the draft, and it's going to be Ed Oliver for me next to Vita Vea for the next 10 years.
Sure.
So moving on to the 2nd round pick. Now I'm a big fan of. It's got to be in the trenches. The first 2 picks for me, because the 3rd and 4th rounds, if you get into offensive linemen, guards, tackles, obviously we need guard competition, and DeMar Dotson is obviously solid, but he's not getting out in the run game, things like that. So I have to think that the second round pick is going to be an offensive tackle or an offensive guard. I don't know how much film you've watched on any of these guys, but I will let you go ahead and take the first pick in the second round.
I can see the logic there for sure. I know Scott Reynolds and Peter Report has forecasted the Bucs potentially trading up into the end of round one for a player. There are two players I think that are pretty interesting. I could see them going either way if either of them on the board. Todd Bowles in New York drafted two safeties very high. The Bucs have a good stable of safeties in terms of a good amount. Not necessarily the best quality. Jordan Whitehead was a fourth-round pick last year. He was okay. I don't think he was a bad safety at all. Justin Evans, aforementioned second-round pick, who had a pretty good year 2 years ago. Not the best this year, but he also was dealing with injuries. They just signed the guy from the Packers. I do know that the safeties coach was Nasir Adderley, the safety out of Delaware, his coach.
Connecting dots.
In college, so there's definitely a connection there. I could see them going that way, especially with Bowles, important
the guy has some range
on the safety in his scheme. Yeah, he's got really good range, so he would play kind of single high in the free roll. Or if they wanted to go in the trenches, this would probably be the least sexy pick possible, but I would personally love to see it, and this is just the way that I like to build a team, and that would be Dexter Lawrence out of Clemson.
Ooh,
I would love to draft him to play nose tackle and then kind of move Vita Vea over to the 3 technique, which is what he originally was drafted for, and just be really big up front. If that were to happen and the Bucs didn't draft a linebacker first, they could kind of mask smaller linebackers, which they would have in Dayon Buchanan and Levante David. You could mask those guys with really big hogs up front or big, defensive tackles up front, which is what Lawrence and Vea would be. So I think personally that would be my favorite route to go. But it should be interesting. I know Dexter Lawrence was in Tampa for a top 30 visit.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a little out of the box. I haven't really thought about it like that. Yeah, so if they were in their 4-3 base, I think Shaq Barrett could play some Sam. I think they want to get him on the field. I know he's on a 1-year deal and he's going to be an outside linebacker in the 3-4, but I think he could play. I think he'll end up playing some Sam because you just don't know what you have with Kendall Beckwith and things like that. So that is that's very intriguing. I like that. I do like that. Well, since you took a defensive tackle, I'm gonna stick with my route.
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna look at the guards here. If he's here, I'm taking him. This is Chris Lindstrom, the offensive guard from Boston College.
Sure.
What I think this team needs, and I know Bruce Arians doesn't do it a lot, and Dirk Cutter was mostly a 60-something, 30-something% pass ratio, and I know Bruce Arians likes to use his passing game as an extension of his running game. But Boston College, he's pushing for A.J. Dillon, who I love, and I was watching some A.J. Dillon highlights, and I kept seeing Chris Lindstrom, and I'm like, man, this dude is a mauler. He kind of reminds me of Ali Marpet, so that would be my guy.
Yeah, he's a solid player.
Chris Lindstrom. Let me write him in here. All right. Moving on to the third round. Now, this is kind of a wild card to me because I don't know. To me, are you on they should draft a running back like hype train like everyone else is, even though they haven't really given up on Rojo, I want to say, you know what I mean? Because of course he didn't have the year you would expect him to have. He was supposed to be our home run threat to our grind the yards Peyton Barber, and it never worked out. But I still think that, if Bruce Arians is in this win now mode, like I think they would still draft a running back, especially a pass catching guy. And I think the third round would be where they do it. So, but I'm going to let you go ahead and go first. We're going to keep doing it like we've been doing it. Where do you
Yep.
think the Bucs might go in the third round? Do you think they're going to keep adding depth? Is this where they go linebacker? Is this where they add maybe another rookie corner? What do you think?
Yeah, so in mine so far, the picks that I think they're going to go is Devin White and Dexter Lawrence. With the third pick, I like Connor McGovern out of Penn State. He's a center or guard. Really tough guy, really big guy. He can move, really strong. What is great about him is position flexibility. We could bring him in and start him at right guard right away. Caleb
Mm-hmm.
Benenoch obviously didn't work out. But what is an added option is that he can play center. Ryan Jensen was signed to a huge deal last year, really underperformed. Not saying I want to get rid of Ryan Jensen at all, but just saying that would provide position flexibility to potentially move on from him after this year if he continued to underperform. So I really like Connor McGovern in around the third round.
Connor McGovern. Yeah,
Yep.
that's so you have taken Devin White, Dexter Lawrence. We've established the need for our middle linebacker. We've added some defensive line depth. Dexter Lawrence, Connor
Yep.
McGovern. You got offensive line. So, like I said, I think this offense is going to need a little more juice. I can't bet on Rojo. That's just like my thinking. A player that I
Mm.
really fell in love with during this draft. I have one pretty much every year. I had a Kareem Hunt who I fell in love with. Chris Godwin I fell in love with. We ended up with him. I really like Miles Sanders, and I think he could be here in the third. I think Miles Sanders and Peyton Barber could be a very, very good tandem.
Mm-hmm.
I know Miles Sanders ran a lot out of shotgun, and I'm sure the Bucs are going to be in shotgun a lot in Bruce Arians' offense. I think he'd be a perfect pairing, and hey, competition brings the best out of people, and if Rojo ends up becoming a really good player, who knows what happens. But that's going to be my pick.
Yeah, I could see that. Jason Light in his press conference said that the team has been impressed with Rojo. I don't know if that's because they're trying to move him or that's actually the truth. But from what I heard was that Rojo just really struggled picking up the playbook last year.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully he's a little bit more in his playbook this year, has a full off season to really go through it, and can hopefully shine next season.
Yeah, and a lot of people say this is Jason Light's like possible last year. I don't really buy that at all because I don't think Bruce Arians would have ever came here. Whatever the record ends up being this year, I'm not. We're going to the playoffs just because we got a Bruce Arians. I'm not in that crowd, but I really don't think that Jason Light's job is in jeopardy at all unless they go, I don't know, like 2-14 or something like that. I think he's going to be here for a while. So I think he's gonna pick players to help him win regardless. I don't think he's in super win now mode, but I don't think he's gonna wait on anybody either. Bruce Arians is 7 now. He's got the
Yep.
5-year contract. He's not going to be 70 years old when he's playing. But Jason Light's not going to be gone anytime soon. And I think he wants to get as many players that are for sure going to help Bruce Arians win right now. And right now, Rojo's just not a for sure thing. And
Yep.
I love Peyton Barber, I do, but he is what he is, and I think every team would love to have a Peyton Barber, but that's just kind of the way I feel about it. Okay, fourth round. This is where it gets pretty tough because these are guys who, obviously you got Quan in the fourth round. You got your hidden gems here and there. But this is where it gets kind of interesting. This might be where I go with my linebacker. Um, Where do you think? What do you think? Fourth round. What's kind of the sweet spot for a certain player at this position? Fourth round.
Yeah, I like a safety here, Mike Edwards out of Kentucky. He
Ooh, nice.
is a safety that's used to blitz a lot. And I know Todd Bowles really does like to blitz his safeties quite often.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that as a pretty good fit, assuming that the Bucs don't draft Nasir Adderley or like a Darnell Savage or someone earlier.
Right. All right. You write this down. Yeah, so like I said, this is my kind of depth area for me. This might be where I go linebacker. A lot of people don't like this guy that much, and I haven't really watched a lot of him. But I like Trey Lamar from Clemson. I know he
Yep.
has his lapses and in coverage and things like that, and he gets kind of stuck in traffic and things like that. But I think with the right coaching and maybe a different scheme, I know he's coming from Brent Venables and everything like that. But I like him, especially at this round and this value. So I'm gonna go Trey Lamar. That's gonna fill our inside linebacker needs, especially if we go to our 4-3 base or we go to our sub package 4-3 nickel. Um, Obviously, it's so hard to tell. I know Levante David's going to be our inside linebacker in our 3-4, and I don't think the Bucs are going to play in 3-4 a lot. I mean, teams are in nickel almost 70% of the time. Some teams are
Yep.
different,
Yep.
but that's gonna be my guy. That's gonna be my linebacker need, and the rest of the players that I'm thinking about picking, I haven't even honestly sat and even looked. So I'm just gonna be looking at depth pieces. So for the fifth round, what you thinking?
I actually like a linebacker in the fifth round as well. It's actually Mike Edwards' high school teammate, which is David Long Jr. out of West Virginia. Um,
Oh
he's just kind of
man, David Long.
a
Forgot
depth
about
piece
him.
um, that could be interesting on special teams, and I think he would be able to crack the rotation. Right now Riley Bulla is kind of the backup linebacker. I could foresee David Long Jr. being an upgrade, maybe, and seeing the field if needed.
I like that. I actually like that. I was on Twitter the other day, and somebody had posted a YouTube video. It was like most underrated linebacker in the draft right now, and it was David Long. And I was watching. I was like, man,
Yeah,
this dude's not that bad.
yeah. It
All
doesn't
right,
have the
guys.
best size, but he
No,
definitely can hit.
well, a guy like Blake Cashman. I mean, a lot of people said Levante David was undersized coming out of
Yep,
Nebraska
agreed.
too, and look
Yeah,
how that worked out. It's a new
yeah,
age. It's a new age for linebackers. We don't have these 250, 260 pound linebackers anymore. You have guys that have to cover these Alvin Kamaras and these Christian McCaffreys out of the backfield, and these nickelbacks just sometimes can't match up. So you need a guy
yep,
with speed who can, make a tackle.
yep.
This is kind of like a. I think he could. I think he could be this far. It might be a little too high for him. As a guy who I love, and Vernon Hargraves, I wish nothing but the best for him. I want him to be successful, but I still want somebody behind him. I know Carlton Davis is going to be there. They're not going to give up on him. I want Jimmy Moreland in the fifth round.
Yeah,
I like
nickelback
Jimmy
out of
Moreland.
JMU.
hmm I like Jimmy Moreland. So, he doesn't have to come in and start right away. He can come in and learn. If he does have to come in, that's fine. Um, I am counting on Vernon Hargraves to, play in a different scheme, play more press man, things like that. But having a guy like him behind Vernon, especially Vernon hasn't had a clean bill of health the past 2 or 3 years. He's missed games almost every season. I think that'd be
Hmm.
a good pick in the fifth round, especially considering it's not really a super need because they're gonna bank on Vernon Hargraves and Carlton Davis and whoever in the slot.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's great value at 5. Sixth round is where it gets really, really hard though. These are your for sure depth guys, not really sure if they're gonna make it guys. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and hop on with the sixth pick or the sixth round pick. What you got?
Bringing back an old name, different spelling, but Keyshawn Johnson out of Fresno State, wide receiver.
Keyshawn
Um,
Johnson.
yeah, solid player. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. He's back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, 8 touchdowns in back-to-back years. Um, he's not especially fast or strong, but he is a good route runner and has good hands and can be a good depth piece.
I like that. I like that. This offense does need some juice. And I was reading Pewter Report, and I'm going to take one of their ideas because I think this team could use it. I would like Tony Pollard in the sixth round.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he's a kick returner and everything like that. I was thinking like it's been so long since I remember the Bucs having any juice at the kick return position. You know what I mean? When was the last kick return for a touchdown you can remember, a punt return? Was it Adam Humphries in preseason? You know what I mean? So I think he'd be a nice piece, and I think he could be there in a later round, especially. I mean, obviously he does some running back things too, but you would have him kind of more of a gadget player, and I think he'd be there around the 6th round.
Sure.
All right, so the 7th round pick. This is obviously a shot in the dark kind of thing. Yeah, it's very hard. This is very hard for me. I was actually up last night thinking about who I was going to take in the 7th, and I couldn't really find one. So who do you have?
Yeah, I just took another guard for depth purposes. Nate Herbig out of Stanford. Not especially fast, but a strong guy who can potentially hold his own, potentially have some depth behind both Ali Marpet and whoever is playing right guard.
Yeah, that's a nice piece. Yeah, you can never have too much offensive guard depth, especially with this team right now.
Yep.
So I was thinking about going safety here. I think I watched some Boston College film. I'm going to go with the safety here. Lucas Dennis from Boston College, senior. You know, obviously, he had some splash plays. I remember who I was watching in Boston College. I think I was watching – who was the defensive end that went to the Tennessee Titans? Was it
Harold Landry.
Harold Landry. Yeah, I was watching Harold Landry film, and this dude kept popping up on tape to me. But, yeah, I started watching some more of him just a little bit. He's not amazing, but obviously you need something if Justin Evans goes down or if anybody goes down, really, it's just a depth piece. So that's going to be my 7th round, Lucas Dennis. Let me pencil him in here. All right, man. So that was fun, though. It's really, really hard when you start actually thinking like a GM. If you go on, the Draft Network, you can go on there and you don't have a timer, so you can sit there and just sift through the players who you want.
Yep.
But this was kind of frustrating. So I'm sitting here thinking you're going to take my guy. I'm like, okay, he didn't take him. I can still get mine.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time. It was great to have you on the show. Obviously, I'll have you on some more. I look forward to your all 22 breakdowns. It's going to be a fun season, man. I'm not gonna say playoffs. I'm just not gonna get hurt again. We're in an abusive relationship with this team. But before you go, I wanted to ask you one question.
Sure.
So you're in New York, correct?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. How did you become a Bucs fan? Have you lived down here before? Or?
I have not. My dad is from Hong Kong. He came over here when he was 18, and he loves sports, but he likes the Jets and the Giants, and that was tough for me to accept. Even as a young kid, when I was 8, 9 years old, and kind of getting into professional sports, I always thought that it would be best to pick one team. So he refused to pick one team, so I picked one that was not one of his 2 teams. So
wow.
21 years later, or 22 years later, here I am, and
is it hard
committed.
Is it hard to watch Bucs games up there, or you just wait till the Game Pass comes out?
No, I just have DirecTV NFL ticket, so I'll watch it live. But,
beautiful. Yeah.
Growing up, it was much more difficult. I would listen to the radio while Gene Deckerhoff will constantly refreshing drive charts. So
just use your
not
mind.
Ideal, but that's how I did it for the first maybe 6, 7 years. I mean, they were also good during that time, so they would have maybe 4 or so nationally televised games a year. But the ones that weren't, I'd be tuned into Gene Deckerhoff and Scott Brantley, or who was it? Scott Brantley. I think Dave Moore a little bit. Hardy Nickerson, I think. I don't know Hardy Nickerson. But anyway, Gene Deckerhoff the whole way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Florida State fan, so I know all about Gene Deckerhoff.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, it was nice to have you on the show. I'm glad we got to finally catch up and do one. And I hope to have you on in the future. And I guess I'll talk to you after the draft, man.
Sure, man. Enjoy the draft.
All
See
right,
you
buddy.
later. Thanks,
See you later.
All right, bye.